Remember, knowledge is not free. You have to pay attention.
You're watching Past the Wire TV.
Big horse, but light on his feet. And he's always showed up and been consistent and been right there with some of the top horses in training. In the Bluegrass Stakes, he showed his determination and his raw ability.
It's over! Zandon wins the Toyota Bluegrass!
I feel breeders will be really blown away by what a striking, outstanding looking horse he is.
Thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com. Ciao, everybody. Welcome to Past the Wire TV and the Belmont Stakes by the Thorograph Numbers and Patterns. If you thought I wasn't going to do it, why? You ask, we deliver. That's just how it goes. Let's just get right to it. In a year or two, we've been doing these Thorograph shows. I think the Preakness last time out was probably the worst result that we've had to date. And we'll talk a little bit about that because it's important to understand why that happened. And there is a reason for it. It's really not the numbers. The numbers don't lie. But we face something in the Preakness that changes things up. The track was a little different. We've got lightly raced 3-year-olds, going over a different kind of surface. Sometimes the numbers will hold, sometimes they won't. It introduces something new for these horses into the equation, and a lot of times we don't know how they will react number wise. And in addition to that, there's always misinterpretations of numbers. Horses at this stage in their career jump forward and regress sometimes a little bit more or less than you expect, and also a tad unexpectedly. So it happens. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't take away from the success we've had in just about every other race prior to that. We've been spot on. So, we're not always going to get it right. We're not always going to land on the right horse. But that was what I would call an unlikely result for a number of different reasons. Not an impossible result, but certainly an unlikely result. And there were a lot of horses that I would have come up with before the winner, and the patterns would have supported that prior to the race, not so much after the race. And sometimes that will happen. But we'll see if we can turn it around on the Belmont Stakes and get back to form. We've had some really, really great calls and spot on shows, since we've been doing this. So we'll see if we can get back on track with that. A couple of different things, this year to consider. Number one, the Belmont Stakes is being run at Saratoga, not at Belmont Racetrack. So, Big Sandy, those big wide turns and everything that goes into that school of thought is pretty much out the window. Okay, we're running it at Saratoga, different type of racetrack, different venue, and we're running it at a different distance. We're running it at 1.25 miles. 1.25 miles is not 1.5 miles. Different pace, different dynamic, different setup, and takes out the fact that some horses will just not get 1.5 miles if you put them on the back of a pickup truck. And there was just some horses that fall into that category. So that being said, it changes things up, and we'll consider all that. I don't think it changes it for the worse. I hope they don't leave it at 1.25 miles and they go back to 1.5 miles and they go back to Belmont where it belongs. I think they're going to do that because they've got the paddock up at Saratoga decked out in green, the Belmont colors. So hopefully this is a temporary thing for another year or two, and then we'll be back to somewhat normal circumstances. But until then, we'll deal with the Belmont Stakes up at Saratoga at a 1.25 miles instead of 1.5 miles. And I love the 1.5 miles. It is what it is. We'll deal with the hand that we're dealt. That's all. Uh, Not discouraged by it. I think it's an interesting race. We lost Fierceness, and if you watch our Belmont coverage, which has been pretty extensive, I mean, we've had Brian Hernandez, Ken McPeak, Chad Brown, even Tom Durkin, who was 0 for 9 in his Triple Crown calling attempts. We've had some great handicapping content, a lot more coming. But if you've been watching and following, you knew that Jim Gazzale, Big Race Jim, and I both thought that Fierceness was a potential, and I'd go as far as even saying just a shy below likely scratch. And he's not running. We're going to talk about his pattern anyway because he's on the list. Because when we got these Thorograph Numbers and Patterns, we were not 100% sure that Fierceness was going to stay in the barn and point for the Haskell, which is a maybe. I mean, we know the horse has some hoof problems. Maybe we've seen the last of him, maybe not. Let's hope not. He's run some exciting races, and I'd love to see him get back to that form. But he ain't in the Belmont Stakes, but we're going to brush over his pattern anyway because so many people are fascinated by that horse that we'll just kind of throw it in there. So let's just get right to it. When we do the show this early out, hopefully it gives you a heads up, gives a lot of people time to watch it and check it out. Definitely put in the comments what your thoughts are. Subscribe, hit the alerts button or the bell or whatever the heck it is, so you know when we got this new Belmont Stakes content coming out. Never know who we might bring to you. The Brian Hernandez conversation was super interesting. Chad's was a little bit revealing. Ken's was a little bit revealing. A lot of great stuff. So ride with us, and you won't starve. So that's that. Antiquarian coming into the Belmont off a win, I believe, in the Peter Pan, if memory serves correct. We loved them that day, gave them out on the channel, tracking trips, loved them. If you're not a member of Tracking Trips, this is a great time to check it out and join. And if you are a member, then you were probably on Antiquarian, or at least you knew that I was in the Peter Pan. Antiquarian has no races at 2. And he's got a heck of a nice pattern at 3. He's just, progressed the way that I love to see. 7.25, 7.25, 6.25, then runs a 3. Shows every indication of a horse moving forward that will move forward again. I've got no doubt that, he's going to move forward. Is it enough to win the race? Well, we'll see that and see how he shapes up with some of the other horses here. But he's definitely a horse that I could see running, a 1 or even a 0. Certainly a 2 or a 1. But even a 0, even a 0, negative if he likes the racetrack. But I love that slow, steady progression as opposed to those big jumps. So Antiquarian shows every sign to me of a horse moving forward. And we're in alphabetical order here because, it's what is today? Today, I don't even know what day it is. How bad is that? It's Friday. The Belmont is a week from tomorrow, so they haven't drawn yet. So we're in alphabetical order. Batten down. Late surprise kind of entry. Belmont always warrants respect. You respect the connections, but like I always say, and it proves, proves to be the numbers don't lie, And this horse, although he's got a nice pattern, would have to take a big jump forward, bigger than I expect him to be able to do in order to get into the win contention for the Belmont. I almost said Travers because I got that Saratoga state of mind right now because they're running it up there. But we got no starts at 2, but we've got 4 starts at 3. We've got 11 3/4, 8, 8, 8. Love those 3/8. Love when horses pair numbers or run them 3 times. Once you get to 4 and 5 times, as those of you that have watched the show in the past, the Thorograph shows know, once you do it too much, then I kind of think you are who you are. But 3 is not really too much, but we'll find out, which way he's going on Saturday, but a week from Saturday. But here's the thing. Even if he goes forward 5 points, 3, 6 points, 2, I don't think that's going to be fast enough to win the race based on some of the competition here. So he's got an okay pattern. He's on the verge of having, too many 8s to think he's going to go forward. I apologize. Motorcycle going by really fast. Southwest Florida, you get that. I've done it myself, so I can't complain too much, even though I don't do no more. I prefer 4 wheels to 2 at this point. But Batten down can go forward enough to win. I doubt it. Dornoch. Anybody back on Dornoch's bandwagon? There were an awful lot of people on it. I was never one of them. He's a horse that I had, publicly said I didn't like the way he got over the racetrack. I didn't like the way he got over the racetrack in the, I apologize. I thought my phone was on silent. It is now. I didn't like the way he was getting over the racetrack in Florida. He didn't really run good in the Derby. Skipped the Preakness, pointed for this, supposedly working better. I said from the Remsen that I thought, even though he came back on the inside and beat Sierra Leone, that Sierra Leone ran the much better race and that he would not be able to beat Sierra Leone again. So far, that's been an accurate statement. I do believe it will hold. But let's look at and see what the numbers say, because the numbers don't lie. So we look at Dornoch and we look at a horse that has his share of starts. He runs a 10 as a 2-year-old, goes to an 8.5, then pairs 6s to close out his 2-year-old year. So he's showing all the right signs on the numbers. And I believe that last 6, the second one, when he run 10, 8.5, 6, 6 was the day he came again on the inside and beat Sierra Leone. Comes back as a 3-year-old, equals that number at Gulfstream Park, 6.5. Didn't think much of the field. Didn't like the way he got over the racetrack. Keeneland runs another 6.25. Again, I was not impressed. And in the Derby, he run 11.25 and didn't really impress all that much. I tend to think he's overrated. I think he got a little bit of hype because of the connection with Mage, last year's Derby winner. So he doesn't have a pattern to me that screams going forward. If anything, and he does go forward, it's not much to go forward off an 11.25 for a grade 1, grade 2 stake horse like him. So yeah, he can go forward, but enough to get in contention, I don't know. And his pattern doesn't scream going forward. He would really have to reverse things. His pattern, if anything, says possibly going the wrong way. So he's looking for a rebound. And we'll see if he can do it. I mean, Danny Gargan does win a lot of races up at Saratoga, so we'll see, but not for me. Fierceness, who's not running, but we'll just look at his pattern, talk about him, because so many people are intrigued by him. As a 2-year-old, 3.5, 12. 1.5 negative in the Breeders' Cup. Boom, fast number. Regresses to a 4.5. Then in the Gulfstream Florida Derby, he goes lights out and runs a 3.25 negative. Regresses to that 12.75 in the Kentucky Derby. still has that Z pattern. Uh, Still never won a fight, never won a tough race, never won a race where everything didn't go his way. A lot of question marks. We know he's got those hoof issues where he needs equilocks in order to run. He looked nowhere near as good as Mindframe in that work last week. And after the work, I said I didn't think he was going to run. Reminds me of Go Rocket Ride in the Breeders' Cup Classic a couple of years ago. People were raving about him. I'm like, I don't like the work. He scratched. Archangelo was possibly going to be the favorite. I didn't like the way he worked. He scratched. Fierceness, I didn't like the way he worked. He scratched. So I'm no workout expert, but there's 3 in a row. I didn't like the way he worked, and he's not running. Is he going to run in a Haskell? That's what they're pointing for, but maybe those hoof problems are worse than we know. If they were, nobody would tell us. There's not that kind of transparency in the game, and it's unrealistic to expect it with the kind of breeding deals and stud deals and other deals that are going on with these horses behind the scenes for big money. Nobody's going to tell you stuff like that, but we know he uses equilocks. We know that strengthens the hoof walls, and it works very well. So it's actually an advantage to have that strengthening of the hooves when you run. It's not an advantage to need it, but once you have it, it does work. How long it holds up, I think depends somewhat, and I'm not no vet, but I think it depends somewhat on how bad and extensive the problem and the weakness in those hoof walls might be, and we don't know the answer to that. But Fierceness maintains that Z type of in and out pattern, good bad. When he's good, he's very good, but they've all been his own way. But we don't have to deal with him on a week from Saturday. So that's it. I as a bettor, I wish he was in the race because I would have bet against him with both hands, even though he was coming to a good race. I didn't like the way he looked in the workout, and he still never won a fight. And I think you're going to have to win a fight to win the Belmont Stakes. So, I would have been loving betting against him at a short price, but we're just not going to get that opportunity. So it is what it is. Anna Marie. Anna Marie's kind of a horse that, has a little bit of a following. People like the horse, think that, he's, sitting on a big one. I'm not sold. Let's see what the numbers say. We've got as a 2-year-old 11, 7, 5.5. Nice 2-year-old pattern. No question about it. But as a 3-year-old, not quite the same. Comes back 9 3/4, doesn't go past the number. That's a negative. Goes past it the second time out, 5.5. Equals it anyway. And then regresses to an 8 1/4. And now comes back. So, he's an either way as far as I'm concerned. He may have a Z pattern kind of developing a little bit here, and he would be coming to a good race. But again, coming from that 8 1/4, I just think it's a little bit too much of a jump. And we know that these 3-year-olds, especially the lightly raced ones, and he would qualify for that, tend to jump up and jump forward or back more than we might think. But again, from an 8 1/4 to a 1 or a 0, which is what I think it's going to take to win this race, big jump. Big jump. Mindframe, probably the most intriguing horse in the whole field. Left in the gate at Gulfstream, blows past the field like a racehorse and a half, runs a 0 3/4. Bang. Wow. Stretches out, and contrary to most opinions, I'm not generally a fan of an off-the-pace sprinter stretching out. And maybe he's not an off-the-pace sprinter, because off that one race he got left, maybe we can't make that assessment. But he did come off the pace that day at Gulfstream, his only start going into the last one. He's got 2 starts, this horse. But he stretched out at Churchill Downs. He was much closer to the race. He regressed number-wise to a 4, but he won like a boss. And he didn't really have to run, faster than that. And he was certainly entitled to regress off that 0 3/4 horrible trip, but win anyway. Monster of a race that this horse ran at Gulfstream. Uh, I would tend to think with the route race under the belt, uh, he runs back to something close to what he did first time out, especially if he can get the distance. Uh, I think that he might have been, and I'll dare to say it, contrary to probably most people's opinions, but most people's opinions don't matter to me. Uh, I bet on my opinion, and you should bet on your opinion. I'm just here to be a second set of eyes. I'm not here to tell anybody who to bet, or even not to bet. Although sometimes I'll overstep my bounds and say, maybe you shouldn't bet that horse. But Mindframe is not one of them. Mindframe, I can definitely see going back to that 0 and possibly even surpassing it. So I think he is a scary, scary proposition in the Belmont Stakes based off his numbers. I mean, he runs back to that 0 3/4, which is not only possible but likely. He's right in the mix. Dangerous as all heck. Mystik Dan, our Kentucky Derby winner. He's got a really nice pattern too. Might not be as consistently fast as some of the others, but he's getting better. 9.5 as a 2-year-old, 6 1/4. Regresses off that to 14.5, but comes back at 3, 9.5. Then runs that monster race on the off track, 0 1/4. Regresses a little bit, 3.5. Then runs 2 3s. He runs a 3 in the Derby and a 3 in the mud at Pimlico. So he's got those paired 3s. Now, the numbers say and the patterns say likely a forward move off those, 3s. The question becomes, and what you have to evaluate and either believe in or not believe in, is how much does the Derby and the Preakness take out of a horse, and is Mystik Dan a strong enough beast of a horse to run those pair of 3s and go forward off him? He's got that 0 1/4 in the mud at Oakland, and if he runs back to that, he's a contender. And if he goes forward off the pair of 3s, he certainly can run back to that. If he regresses off the pair of 3s, which is possible because of the very nature of the Derby and coming back into Preakness in 2 weeks and now to Belmont in 3 weeks, it becomes a it could go either way kind of situation. So, how do you handle him? And that really comes down to going beyond the numbers a little bit and factoring McPeak, what you think of him, what you think of this horse. And I will say this, I think running it at Saratoga at 1 1/4 probably helps him as much or more than any horse in the race. Because at 1.5 miles, I think he would be much more likely to feel the effects of those 2 3s in those 2 hard races back to back on short rest. And I think he would be a lot more vulnerable at 1.5 miles than he will be at 1.25 miles. So Mystik Dan, I would say, with those 3s, has a pattern that suggests he can move forward, but we got that caveat of how much those 2 races took out of him. Now, McPeak has 2 horses, Torpedo Anna, who could run, probably not going to. I think they're leaning towards Mystik Dan. I don't know that that's 100% official at the time of this show, but it looks like that way. But he did have Torpedo Anna. We know she's a grizzly bear. He told everybody that would listen, and he backed it up, and she proved it. So, he's got somebody else in the wings that he could have run. So I guess he believes Mystik Dan deserves the shot. And I would say, or for winning the Derby and a second in the Preakness, if the horse is acting like he's ready to run another bang-up race like that, then, yeah, why not? Run him. But I would say, as good as that pattern is, there is that caveat, and you've got to get past that if you're gonna back him up. because it's out there and it's staring you in the face. Protective, the other horse from Todd Pletcher. 8.5 as a 2-year-old, comes back, Tampa, 15.5, goes forward to a 7, goes forward again at Aqueduct to 5.5. 15.5, 7, 5.5, going the right way. 5.5 is a lot better than those 8s. We got a couple of horses looking to move forward into contention off 8s. That's a big stretch. Moving forward into contention off of 5.5 is not nearly as big a stretch. Forward moving pattern. I would call him a fringe player if he goes forward, because he's likely to go forward to a 3 or a 2. That's probably not going to be enough. But like we said, sometimes they'll surprise you, go forward a little bit more than you expect. So this is another one you'll need to read a little bit, beyond just the sheer numbers and what they say, and factor in the other things that you factor into your handicapping. And we are doing a Belmont Stakes seminar. It's invitation only. It's a makeup seminar for the Kentucky Derby seminar fiasco that we had. That was 1,000% my fault. I messed that up royally with the wrong link, but everybody that joined that is going to get an invitation to the Belmont Stakes seminar, where we'll cover the Belmont in more detail and some key undercard races. So stay tuned for that as well. But if you didn't, it's only for the Breeders' Cup, only for the Kentucky Derby people. So I promised them all I would do that to make it up. So it's kind of invitation only. But we've got more coming, so don't worry about it if you missed that one. And there'll be plenty of other content. We've got Big Race Jim and Gio doing a rundown of the whole Belmont field, every horse in the race. That's coming up pretty soon. So, and we'll have all kinds of stuff from up there. So don't lose no sleep over if you missed this one. The Breeders' Cup one, that's the one you don't want to miss and lose. You definitely lose sleep if you miss that one, but you won't. There'll be plenty of time for that. But Protective, forward moving pattern. That said, probably not enough to win. Seize the Gray. Got to be intrigued by Seize the Gray. Not many horses win the Pat Day Mile, come back 2 weeks later and win the Preakness. Horses do that, usually ran in the Derby. But, Coach Wayne Lucas did it his way, just like Frank Sinatra, just like me, just like some of you. And his way worked, and it's worked before. So it is what it is. Let's take a look. And he's probably got more races than anybody in here, which is typical of Wayne Lucas, because he likes to run. Anybody that thought he wasn't going to run in the Belmont hasn't been watching Wayne Lucas. 23, first time out is a 2-year-old, 8.5, 13, 8.5, 14. Typical Lucas, jump all over the place kind of horse. You don't really see the consistency. You don't really see the, great races strung together. But as a 3-year-old, this horse, in hindsight, Patton looking better all the time, 6 3/4, 7, 6 3/4 again, then goes to a 4.5, then goes to a 1 3/4. This is a horse that just might really be getting good right now. Coming back into Belmont, he's already shown he's not the normal Lucas horse, because he's of today, not of yesterday, because of yesterday they ran 20 good races in a row. Now they very rarely string them together, but this one's already shown that he can. So 4.5, 1 3/4. He's going forward. He's going the right way. If he repeats that 1 3/4 or goes forward off it, the numbers say, and the numbers don't lie, as we know, the numbers say that he can get right into contention. So he's not such an auto toss for me. Now, Sierra Leone, the freight train. First thing, jockey switch to Flavian Pratt. I'm okay with that. I don't think there's a lot different that Tyler could have done, but it is what it is. Sometimes with a horse that has that kind of habit, Tyler couldn't get him home. You make a change, and you know Pratt is the kind of rider that's liable to do something different. You know, he's liable to move a little earlier. He's liable to move a little later. He's liable to try to keep him inside and see what happens. You don't know what Pratt may do. We know Chad's working with the bit, working with the horse. He knows what the problem is. If anybody could figure it out and get him to run a little bit straighter the last part of the race, it's Chad Brown. The other thing to consider is that 1.25 miles for the first time. He was probably more tired than he had ever been. You know, he makes those big, wide moves, sustained runs like a freight train, which we've been calling them since November. You know, he was probably a little bit more tired than he had ever been in the Derby, so that probably gave him a little bit, you know, more of a reason and tendency to lug in and get in like he was doing. But number-wise, his pattern is outstanding. 9, 4 3/4 as a 2-year-old. He run a better number than Dornoch, who beat him in the Ramsey. Ran better in my opinion for sure. As a 3-year-old, 4.5, 1.5, 1.5 in the Derby, better number than the winner in the Derby, which we called and expected before the numbers even came out. Now you got a horse who, as a 3-year-old, has gone 4.5, 1.5, 1.5. The numbers alone scream forward move. Lightly raced, forward move, home field for Chad at Saratoga. I could see a 0, 0 negative, 1 negative, 2 negative. A very, very big race coming from Sierra Leone, the freight train. Especially if Chad, whatever he's thinking of doing with the bit and whatnot, you know, works. And the move to Pratt works. And I have a feeling it will. Sometimes you just got to change things up a little bit. And like I said, may move sooner, may move later, may try and move inside and save some ground for a change with him. Doesn't have as big a field as he did in the Kentucky Derby to worry about. So maybe he doesn't have to go all that wide. He goes forward the way that the numbers and patterns say that he may. The race could very well be for second. Unless Mindframe is just freaky good and really goes past that 0, which is not impossible. The Wine Steward. The Wine Steward is steady as a rock, has a nice pattern, just doesn't seem quite fast enough for these. As a 2-year-old, 15, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5. Got better at 3, 3.5, then regressed a little bit to a 4. Steady, but doesn't have a pattern that screams he's going to move forward. May regress a little bit again, or may run a very close number to what he ran last time out at Aqueduct, but that's not certainly going to be good enough to win. Impossible, no, but doesn't have the kind of pattern that I want to see. So he's a pass, at least for me. Torpedo Anna, the Grizzly Bear. Shame she's not going to run because, well, at least we don't think she's going to run because she certainly on the numbers deserves it. As a 2-year-old, 8.5, 4 3/4, regresses to a 9. That's forgivable off that 4 3/4 and that 5-point move forward off the debut, or 4-point move forward off the debut. As a 3-year-old, nothing short of excellent. 4 3/4, then a 1 1/4 in the Kentucky Oaks. 2 races, looks like she's going to go forward. Ran that 1 1/4 relatively easy. Still a fast number, so it takes their toll, but visually definitely looked like there was more in the tank. I really wish she was running, and I would go as far as to say I think she would probably have a better chance in this race than Mystik Dan based on what I see on the Thorograph Numbers and Patterns. But I don't think we're going to get to see that. But if we were, and if we do, she's got the pattern and numbers that can put her right in the mix. Tuscan Gold is another one who's probably not going to run. That's a little bit of a disappointment to me. I thought he was a serious contender. 10 as a 2-year-old. Then he comes back 5 1/4, 4 1/2, 4 1/2. So he's got those paired 4 1/2s. That's faster than that 5 we talked about with protective. It's fast enough where if he moves forward to a 1, a 0, a 0 negative, a 1 negative, he's right square in the mix. And I don't think he liked the track in Baltimore. And I think he's definitely got a forward moving pattern. So, maybe they're waiting for the Haskell or the Jim Dandy and don't see the need to run against the freight train. So, we'll see. And maybe he'll wind up in the race. We don't know. Chad, I don't think has made a final decision on that yet. But there you have it. The Belmont Stakes by the Thorograph Numbers and Patterns. Visit amwager.com for all their latest promos. You can bet the Belmont Festival with Amwager. Thorograph.com. You can go there, get the Thorograph sheets for not only the Belmont Stakes, but all the undercard races. Any questions about any of the horses, put them in the comments, shoot them over to me. If you get the Thorographs and you have questions on any of the undercard races or what I think of a pattern or a number or a race or whether a horse is going forward or backwards, put it in the comments. I try to get to everybody except I get to you. If you check out some of the comments we get some great comments and people, thank you. Love to see it. Gio loves it. I love it. Big Race Jim loves it. Charles Trent loves it. I mean, we all really, really appreciate the positive feedback that a lot of you and the love that a lot of you give to us. But we get some bizarre comments. I'm like, did this person even watch the show? What are they talking about? But what are you going to do? Social media, internet, YouTube is what it is. But I think we did a pretty good dissection here of the race. I think we isolated who's going forward, who's likely to regress, and also, and maybe most importantly for this race, who the 1 1/4 helps, maybe who it hurts, and who, even though they're going forward, is probably not going to be able to go forward fast enough to win. All very important points to consider when you do your final work on the Belmont Stakes at Saratoga. Hopefully, I'll see plenty of you at the seminar and in the shows we got leading up to what promises to be a big weekend. I will share one last thought about the Belmont Festival because we're hearing a lot of talk about it, and a lot of people, find it a negative, and it is a negative, and it's hard to put a positive spin on a negative. But I always say we got to play the hand that we're dealt. So we're going to play the hand that we're dealt. And what does that mean? That means we may have some short fields. We may have a couple of grade 1, grade 2 races with 4 or 5 horse fields. Nobody likes betting on them. We all want the big fields. I get it. We all get it. It's the truth. But here's the thing. We got to play the hand that we're dealt. All right? So if we know that's the hand that we're dealt, what does that mean? Okay? That means that you gotta be definitive. You gotta be decisive. You gotta say, I'm gonna go with precision. I'm gonna go with being decisive, and you take a stand in those races. And if you're right, you just gotta be right. Don't cry, 4 or 5 horse field. Instead of betting a 50-cent ticket, spreading out all over the place, bet a $5 ticket, $20 ticket, a $2 ticket, a $1 ticket, or whatever ticket you can. But instead of spread it out, take a stand, take an opinion, and back it up. And sometimes those small fields force us to do that, because if you spread, you're putting yourself on the behind the 8 ball. It's like boxing. You box horses, you got 5 losing bets to overcome and to take out right away. So, if we got some short fields, we'll work around it. Don't worry about it. And we'll talk about that at the seminar and in this, shows leading up to everything and on tracking trips. So don't be discouraged by the short fields. We pick the winner. It don't matter. So don't worry about that, and if you ride with us, you won't stop. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show. Let me know what you think in the comments. And I'll do a show from Saratoga by the Thorograph Numbers and Patterns. Which race? I don't know. You tell me. Whichever one you tell me, the Whitney, the Alabama, the Travers, the Test, whichever one, I'll do my best to get it done. So put in the comments which one you want to see me do for the Spa, which will be here before we know it. So that said, thanks everybody for tuning in. Ciao for now.
In the 2023 First Crop Sires Race, Maximum Mischief makes the lead with the most 2-year-old maiden special winners by any sire. On the backstretch, Mitoli and Omaha Beach close the gap with stakes performers from coast to coast. Vino Rosso finds his best and leads on the turn with 4 Grade 1 colts on dirt. But it's Mitoli with his 3rd TDN Rising Star, your champion freshman, leading an impressive Spendthrift Superfecta.
With new DRF All Access past performances. With one best-in-class product, you now get all 3 past performance formats. Go to drf.com and use coupon code 1FREEPP for a free single card today.
Mini, a top 10 first crop sire in 2023, standing at McMahon of Saratoga. 14 first crop winners, including My Shady Lady, winner of the $500,000 New York Stallion Series 5th Avenue Stakes, Grade 2 winner Winstock, and Stakes winner Solo Shot. Solo Mini, the 7th leading freshman sire and the only top 10 freshman sire with a Grade 1 or Grade 2 winner. He sired a $700,000 2-year-old at the OBS April sale. His juveniles sold for nearly 6 figures on average, more than 12 times the stud fee. Solomini, a controversial DQ from being a Grade 1 winner by 2-time Horse of the Year Curlin, standing at McMahon of Saratoga Thoroughbreds. Sure Bet Coffee. Put the giddy up in your cup. Tracking trips with Pick 6 King John Stetton. It's one of the best tools in horse racing for any level of player. It's your second set of eyes, spotting troubled trips, betting angles, track trends, horses to watch and favorites to fade, 10 figs, ticket structure, and more. At Tracking Trips, you're a friend with benefits. Not a member? You must hate winning money. Join Tracking Trips now. Visit pastthewire.com and we'll see you in the winner's circle. Remember, nobody does it better.
does it better.